Hello everyone, this is Ari here of Plastic Model Builders. We are going to be doing the F-16 Air Team model, which is basically the Thunderbirds. Looks like a good model to do. I'm going to be doing an off version that's not exactly in the directions. It's going to be armed. There was a number 10 Warbirds Thunderbird plane that was armed. They did use that, so that's what I'm going to be doing. It doesn't have the exact armory for it, but I figure what the heck, it'll look kind of cool anyway to see the red, white, and blue with all the missiles on it that it comes with. Remember to get the latest updates. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That way you get those latest videos as quick as possible. This is the model. Let's open up this box and we'll get to it. Got our instructions here. Got all the parts. I don't know about you guys, but I usually like to wash all my parts first before I build a model. It's even in the instructions, it tells you to do it, so that's what I'm going to do. Just use some warm water. I put a little bit of soap in there, dishwashing soap to be exact. It'll get all the machining oils off and the parts oils on there. Rinse them off good, pull that plug out, rinse them. Just let these dry in the sun. So as usual, you open up the directions. You know, it tells you about the Thunderbirds. Turn over to our instructions. Of course it has over here the cockpit, so naturally that's what we're going to start with, is the cockpit. Before we do actually start working on the cockpit, because some of the parts need to be painted, we are going to get to some of these pieces over here on these pages and put some of those together ahead of time. That way the glue can dry and set while we paint our model at the same time. First off, we're going to start out by cutting the air intakes out and the wheel wells. Alright, so I'm cutting out the intake right here. Then we're going to do the right and left side of the intake. Once we cut those out, we're going to cut out the front wheel well. Make sure that when you cut these off, you clear all the flashing and make sure all your parts fit as necessary. And that's what I'm doing right here. There was a little bit of flashing on there. Here's the wheel well, so we got to make sure that fits on the inside of the intake. You see it's got this groove here where it fits. I'm just showing you how that goes together right there. Once we test that fit out, we're going to glue this up and just let it sit for a while. So that's how it fits. Just going to put some glue on the inside. There's a small little bevel that we're going to get on the insides of these air intakes, and that's also where the wheel well is going to sit. That is the front wheel well, by the way. So just continue to put the glue in this, and once we have all the glue where we need it, we're going to take that wheel well, put it in place inside of these intakes. Once we have this inside of these intakes, we're going to slap the front of that onto the intake. You do want to make sure that there's a small piece that goes on the inside of the intake. I forgot to put that in. I managed to get it in later. It was rather long. I managed to do it. Here you see that little notch that's on the top there. That's where the airflow divider goes. Remember to put that in. It's a really small piece. I had trouble getting it in, but I did manage to do that. Here I'm just putting on the front of the intake into that. As you can see, it doesn't have the air divider in there. Put it in. Here are the right vertical tail half and the left vertical tail half. Just cut these out. Clear all the flashing off of those. Make sure your pieces fit well. As you can see, I'm taking them out right here. Testing the fit. There's a small little gap that's up at the top. You'll need to take care of that with some putty. Put your glue on the inside. Oh, and hey, look at that. It's our manufacturing stamp that they put inside of the model. So continue putting all the glue on this. Make sure you spread it out across that fin right over there in the middle of it. Gets it nice and good. Make sure all the glue is where we want it. Once it's all got the glue, just take the two pieces, combine them together, make sure they fit right, and just kind of hold them. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to put these two pieces together. You'll see that gap that I'm talking about. I'll show it here briefly, just up at the top. These fit fairly well when we did put them together. Get all the flashing out of that corner right there, as you can see. See some small gaps right there, so you'll just have to fill those in with some putty later on. We're going to continue cutting out some small pieces. So here are our AIM-9 Sparrow missiles. We're going to cut those out. Remember, I mentioned earlier that there was a number 10 Warbird Thunderbird that they actually put into combat. That's the model I'm doing. It doesn't have the exact armory for it, but I'm going to use what the model has. Here's a fuel tank. I don't know why I took that out, because the model doesn't even have that one on there for the number 10 Warbird. It doesn't even have the decals for the number 10, but I'm just going to do with what I have. Here's some Sidewinder missiles. We have their little tail fins at the end here. So cut those out. Cut your missiles out. It was a little difficult getting these off of the sprue. I had a little bit of trouble getting the tail fin pieces to stay on, and they don't line up real well, so just pay attention to that when you're gluing them on. Here I had a little bit of the hairs come off from my glue that I was using. There's a final piece of that. Here's the sparrow that we're gluing together. Make sure your pieces fit, of course. Just put the glue on this. What I like to do is I get a little bit of the glue on the outside of it as well, and I kind of scrape it off. That way I don't have to put any putty on my missiles. Kind of works well for me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it does turn out very well when it does work. So just get both sides of this. Take your other missile half, stick it together. If you want, use some tape to make sure it's secured properly all the way. That way you leave no creases in there. This is the fuel tank right here. I have no idea why I even put that together, as I mentioned earlier. I guess I just kind of did it. But in case you want to see it, this is it. Just put your glue on the inside edge. The pieces on this lined up very well, actually, so I didn't have much trouble with this. Make sure you're putting the glue in the proper spot, or I should say cement, whatever you want to call it. Just go around the edges here very carefully. Put the two halves together. Make sure they line up properly, as always. And this, like I said, I had no trouble. And there's the fuel tank. I'm not putting it on the model, but there it is. You can see it. Looks like I'm getting out the paint bottle, so we know what that means. It's time to do the cockpit, because I got all the other parts together that I wanted to pre-glue. So here are the cockpit pieces. Going to paint those on the sprue. This is some light gray color that calls for the model. Here's the actual cockpit itself. There are no detail on that, so you're going to have to use the decals that it came with or order a custom part. This is the back that's going to go inside. Here are our sides of the chairs. They're going black. Just paint both of those. There's one side that's going to get a little bit of a green for the, it looks like it's just like, I don't know, maybe like it looks like a fire extinguisher type deal, but it's on the side over here, and you're going to see me paint that later. Just go over these. This is the instrument panel. That's going black, and you're going to have to put some decals on that. There are two of them. They're rather small, so make sure you get those properly. This is the little control stick right here, so you know your throttle. Paint that. We've got the inside of the chair. That's going to go in olive color, of course, as most chairs do. Once it's painted olive, you've got some stripes on there, which are going to be for the seat belts, and those knobs that are up at the top, those go gray as well. Here is our little ejection handle. It goes yellow. I put some stripes on there. They didn't turn out, and I'm not going to show it because I did a bad job. So here we're painting these gray. I don't know what these things are called at the top, but they're on there. We've got our seat belts. Those go gray. There's two of those right here. You got some on the front, and then you got actually on the chair. So we're going to paint those. Here's that little green thing I was talking about. You could see that in many reference pictures. Don't know what it is. You could see the black there on the ejection handle. Cut that out. Carefully glue it. Don't forget to scrape the paint away, because you know glue doesn't bond to the paint. I didn't do that, so I had a little trouble. It's alright, I got it in. There's the cockpit seat right there. I cut that off of the sprue. I'm going to cut these off of the sprue right here, our left and right seat. Once we do that, test our fit as we always do. Scrape away any parts that we don't want in the flashing. Pay attention to how this goes together and where it actually sits in the seat. I did a couple of test runs to make sure I knew what else had to get painted and what got glued. This kind of slides down in there and it fits a certain way. You'll see it on the back of the chair and how it goes together. I let that sit for a while. Once it was all glued, there you can see it. I let that dry, so now it's basically time to assemble the actual cockpit. There's a little notch right there. We're going to put our instrument panel on. You can see I have it a little crooked. It's not that bad. You're not going to see it inside the plane. I'm not a stickler for details like some people might be. Got our little control stick. We're going to glue that down. Wasn't that easy. It's a small part. Make sure there's no glue in that little round section there. I had some glue, so of course, naturally, my control stick didn't go in as well because of the paint. Here are the decals I was talking about. You've got to put these onto the model inside of that cockpit. You got your left and right instrument panels, and of course, what actually goes onto the actual instrument panel itself by name. Cut these out. They've got their numbers. Drop them into your bowl of water. We all know how to put decals on. I let them in the water for about 10 seconds. After the 10 seconds, I take out my decals, stick them on a paper towel. There's about 4 of them. Let them sit for 30 seconds. Make sure you test them. You want to see if they slide back and forth, which they all do. So hey, we're ready to put these decals onto the cockpit. So here we go. This is the left side. Going to slide that on. That fits fairly nicely. The right side has a notch in it. You got to get that in by where the control stick goes. That was a little hard to do that. You may want to cut that out. I had to use a brush to wet it just to get it to stick. We're going to put some on the actual instrument cluster. These weren't easy. I need to start putting something just to make sure that stays down from now on. That way it doesn't move. It'll probably make it a lot easier for me. Used my brush there, had a little bit of water on there. That way I could get it to stick. This was a really small decal. I had trouble with that. That goes inside of the instrument panel right there. Just barely, you can see it, and that's where it goes. Hard to get on. Used my hobby knife. I got it to work. After that, I put the chair in. There it is. It's time to glue this inside of the model. So we've got to cut some pieces out again. I am going to paint the Afterburner ring right here. This goes black. It's still on the sprue. We're going to paint that. Cut it out. After we get this cut out and that paint dries, we are going to cut out this piece right here, which is the exhaust nozzles. And after we cut out the exhaust nozzle, we got this little thing in the middle here. We're going to get all the flashing out. There was a lot in my model. Maybe yours won't have it, so that could be a plus. We're going to get out the exhaust nozzle segments and cut those out. There was like 6 of these. One of them has a slot in there. That way you know for its orientation and how to put this into the exhaust nozzle itself. It was a tight fit. I had a little bit of trouble when I was doing this. I'm not going to paint these now. I'm going to paint them after the model is completely painted. You can see that notch there, and there's the notch on the one nozzle. I'm going to stick that in. I didn't test fit any of the pieces because it was pretty hard to. So just put a glue ring around the whole inside of the exhaust nozzle where that notch is, and went all the way around. When you glue these exhaust nozzle segments together, there's going to be a small tab that also has to get glued. So I'm going to put this on there. You see that tab that I'm gluing up at the top? That goes on all of them. So just be careful how you put these pieces in so they can fit properly. I glue another segment in there. Here we see another tab getting glued. Again, put the next piece in there. Make sure it's all secured. Got to make sure these are lining up properly. I had trouble and I had to work with it. You see a small gap there. I probably actually had to wind up pushing these together just to get them to fit. I don't know how you're going to have to do it. Maybe you'll have an easier time than I will. This was not the easiest piece to glue in the entire model. I will say it did give me some trouble. Here we go, and just kind of got to hold it together. That way it stays properly when the glue dries. So now we're finally getting somewhere. We're cutting out the top of the fuselage right here. There's several little breaks that we have to do. Of course, make sure you clear those tabs off before you glue any pieces together. It's going to be easier. I had some that were on there. Here we got the top removed. Get all the flashing that's out of there. I had a minimal bit of it. It wasn't too much. Just, scrape with the edge of your knife. I know you guys know how to do it. Here's the bottom of the fuselage. You see where the air intake is going to go right there. It sits fairly deep in there. You kind of got to push it in when it comes time to that. We're going to do that in part 2. So just break this out. There's a tab right there that needs to be cut out. So you want to make sure, test fit the wings, how they go together. We got the back here that's going to go inside of the cockpit section. Cut our little tabs off of there. It's got a little section so you know where it goes. Don't forget to paint the inside of the cockpit. I didn't show that. You don't have to show you everything, but you know that's going to get done. This slides down. You're going to see some notches that it actually sits in front of. Just let that glue dry. We're going to put our cockpit in here. It sits in, got those little tabs right there so you know where it aligns. Put glue on each one of those. You're going to grab your cockpit with the chair already in place and just kind of put that in. Make sure it seats properly. Let it dry. You know the deal. Same thing, different model. Got our cockpit. You see it going in right here. I showed you where those line up. Right there at the bottom there. They're lining up perfectly. We sit that in. I'll show you. There's one tab there. The other tab is right there. Goes in nice and easy. We have to drill these holes out right here for our missiles if you're planning on putting those on. I am doing the Warbird version. Don't have Warbird stickers. Maybe I can print some out. We'll see. So just get those tabs cut out. I did the front and the back side. It's on each side of the aircraft. There's actually a total of 8 holes, but it only comes with enough to do the 2 outer holes according to the instructions. So that's what I did. If you've got extra spare parts to where you can make this a full armed aircraft, by all means do it. I bet it'll look really cool when it's done. This is the top section of the airplane, the top fuselage. I'm only going to show you me gluing half of it because you don't need to see it all. Put your little bit of glue right over here. Make sure you have some clamps ready so you can clamp this together. I had a little bit of trouble with it. This is one where the wings sit on the inside, not where they all meet up all the way around. So just be careful where the glue goes, proper glue placement. Going around all the edges here, you see those flaps. That's where it goes around the flaps. The bottom sits into that. Go around the edges here. Go around the cockpit area and where the nose cone's going to go. Come back around to the other side. Going to put some glue all in the middle of the wings. That's how I did mine. I don't know how you're going to do yours. It may not have even worked. Put the two pieces together. You're going to see how they line up. The insides of those tabs just kind of push into that. Press down nice and firm. I got 3 clamps on these. That way I made sure it held in place. Press down again, as you see I'm doing here. I put some clamps on the wings. And then one goes right here on the front of the nose cone. That's the end of part 1. I hope I kept it interesting. Subscribe for the next video. Hey, give us some comments and likes as well.